In the summer of 2009, the United States federal government initiated a program officially known as the Car Allowance Rebate System, but the public came to know it by a much more infamous name, Cash for Clunkers. The pitch was simple, seductive, and framed as a patriotic duty. Citizens were encouraged to turn in their aging, less efficient vehicles in exchange for a government credit of up to $4,500 toward the purchase of a brand new, fuel-efficient replacement. On the surface, the narrative was a masterpiece of political marketing. It was presented as a triple-threat victory that would protect the environment by reducing emissions, provide a much-needed adrenaline shot to a struggling economy, and put modern, safer cars in the hands of everyday people. It was framed as a scenario where everyone wins. However, those who spent their lives under the hoods of cars, the real mechanics and the backbone of the automotive community, recognized the reality behind the curtain. What Cash for Clunkers actually represented was not a benevolent environmental policy, but a calculated, government-mandated execution of the most reliable, analog, and durable vehicles ever manufactured in America. This was a systematic purge. Nearly 700,000 perfectly functional cars and trucks were deliberately destroyed. These vehicles were not allowed to be sold to low-income families, they were not permitted to be donated to charities, and they were strictly forbidden from being salvaged for parts. By law, they had to be rendered permanently inoperable before they were even sent to the crusher. The ripple effects of this decision permanently altered the landscape of the American automotive market. The secondary market for used vehicles, which working-class Americans had relied upon for generations to find affordable and reliable transportation, was decimated and has never truly recovered. This is a forensic audit of that era, a deep dive into how the destruction was carried out, the legendary machines that were sacrificed, the digital replacements that took their place, and the critical information you need to understand before the next phase of this technological trap is fully implemented in 2026. To qualify for the government rebate, dealerships were bound by strict legal requirements to ensure that the engine of every single trade-in was completely and utterly destroyed before the vehicle ever left their lot. The rules were absolute. The car could not be resold, and its vital components could not be harvested to keep other vehicles on the road. They had to kill the machine. The chosen method for this mechanical execution was a solution of sodium silicate, commonly referred to in the industry as liquid glass. The process was as clinical as it was heartbreaking for those who value machinery. Mechanics were tasked with draining the lifeblood, the engine oil, from these qualifying vehicles and replacing it with the sodium silicate solution. Once the liquid glass was added, the engines were started and forced to run. As the engine temperature rose, the sodium silicate heated up and began to crystallize inside the engine block. Within the internal combustion chamber, metal surfaces that were engineered to glide against one another with the help of lubrication began to grind and seize. Within a matter of minutes, the pistons would lock in place, the crankshaft would stop turning, and the engine would effectively weld itself into a solid, useless mass of metal. Footage captured at dealerships during that summer remains haunting. It shows mechanics standing over open hoods, watching as legendary engines smoked, knocked, and eventually gasped their final breath. For many of the technicians involved, the atmosphere felt less like a workplace and more like a funeral. In every practical sense, they were witnessing the state-sponsored death of mechanical excellence. The vehicles that were driven into dealerships during that summer were far from being junk. In reality, the program claimed some of the most indestructible engines ever produced by American manufacturing. Among the most notable victims was the Jeep 4.0-liter inline six-cylinder. This engine featured a cast-iron block and a deceptively simple design that was engineered so far beyond its original tolerances that it became a legend. It was common for Cherokee owners to drive these engines well past the 300,000-mile mark with nothing more than basic maintenance. Parts were plentiful and inexpensive, and a teenager with a basic set of tools and a repair manual could rebuild one in a single weekend. Another tragic loss was the GM 3800 V6, a staple in Buicks and Pontiacs throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. Consumer reports and industry experts alike frequently cited it as one of the most reliable engines ever to roll off an assembly line. Owners spoke about these engines with the same reverence a rancher might have for a loyal working horse. They simply did not quit. Both of these engines shared a specific trait that the automotive industry in 2009 was desperate to eliminate. They were repairable by ordinary people. They required no proprietary software to diagnose, no mandatory visits to a high-priced dealership, and parts could be found at any local auto parts store. From a corporate perspective, you cannot easily convince a working-class family to sign up for a new $40,000 SUV with a 7-year loan if their 1998 Jeep Cherokee refuses to die. The forever engines represented a barrier to constant consumption, and therefore, they had to be eradicated. Once the era of analog cars was crushed into scrap metal, the replacement vehicles waiting on the showroom floors were built upon a fundamentally different philosophy. Starting around 2010, the automotive industry began a rapid transition, replacing traditional mechanical controls with complex software interfaces. The tactile knobs, switches and dials that allowed a driver to adjust the climate control or the radio by feel without ever taking their eyes off the road began to vanish. In their place, manufacturers installed touchscreen displays running proprietary, closed-source software. This shift changed the very nature of vehicle ownership and maintenance. For example, if a 2002 Silverado has a broken blower motor, the fix is a $30 part and an afternoon of work in the driveway. Conversely, if a 2019 Ram 1500 experiences a failure in its Uconnect screen, it necessitates a trip to the dealer, a proprietary replacement unit, a specialized software flash, and a repair bill that can easily climb to $2,000. These repairs cannot be sourced from the aftermarket. Your local AutoZone cannot help you, and your neighbor with a lift in his garage is powerless against the software locks. This is not an accidental evolution. It is a deliberate design. When a vehicle is transformed into a software platform, every necessary repair becomes a revenue event for the manufacturer. The backyard mechanic was systematically engineered out of existence, and the people who paid the price were the working Americans who bought into the promise of a better car. Since approximately 2012, nearly every new vehicle sold in the United States has been equipped with a factory-installed cellular modem. Most consumers were never explicitly told about this, and they almost certainly were never asked for their informed consent. Operating under various brand names like OnStar or other connected services, these systems are designed to collect data continuously. This isn't just about navigation. It's about behavioral tracking. These modems monitor hard braking events, rapid acceleration, precise GPS coordinates, the time of day you travel, and the duration of your trips. This massive cache of data is then packaged and sold to third-party data brokers, such as LexisNexis Risk Solutions. From there, your behavioral profile is sold to insurance companies. Your insurer may be using data from how you drove last Tuesday to justify raising your premiums next month, all without ever disclosing the source of that information. A 2002 Toyota Camry does not have a cellular modem. It does not report your driving habits to a server farm in real time. The individual driving a 25-year-old truck is not generating a behavioral profile for an insurance algorithm to analyze. This represents the fundamental difference between a tool that you own and a device that monitors you. This brings us to the most concerning development yet, a provision that has caused a wave of alarm across the country. Buried deep within a massive federal infrastructure bill is a mandate requiring what legislators have termed advanced impaired driving technology to be installed in all new passenger vehicles. The mechanism behind this mandate is a computer system that utilizes interior cameras and sensors to monitor the driver. This system is granted the ultimate authority to decide whether or not you are fit to operate your own vehicle. If the algorithm determines that you should not be driving, perhaps due to fatigue, distraction, or what it perceives as impairment, it has the power to disable your vehicle. It doesn't just alert you, it can shut the car down. The timeline for this rollout points toward vehicles produced around the year 2026. Once this becomes the industry standard, every new car sold in America will effectively feature a federal kill switch managed by an algorithm that you cannot audit, cannot influence, and cannot override. Consider the potential for failure. What happens when a camera fogs up during a brutal Minnesota winter and the system misinterprets the visual data, disabling your car while you're traveling at 70 mph? There is no appeals process and no human in the loop. In this future, you will not truly own a car. You will own a revocable permission slip to travel, subject to the whims of an algorithm. This looming reality is exactly why we are seeing the rise of the Ghost Fleet rebellion. There is a rapidly growing movement of Americans who are hunting down older trucks and SUVs, vehicles built before the era of touchscreens, before the telematics grid, and before the kill switch mandate. People are now willing to pay premium prices for a 1999 Ford F-250 with a 7.3-liter diesel engine. These buyers aren't looking for luxury, they are looking for autonomy. They want a machine with no cellular modem, no proprietary software locks, and no algorithm with the authority to kill the ignition. They want a vehicle that is repairable by anyone who has ever held a wrench, and for which parts are available at any corner store. These vehicles are the survivors, the ones that didn't roll into a dealership during the purge of 2009, and the engines that escaped the liquid glass. Paying a high price for a 25-year-old truck in 2025 is not an act of nostalgia. It is perhaps the most rational financial and personal decision an American can make. It is a choice made by those who understand that every new car today comes with surveillance hardware, software designed to maximize dealer revenue, and a federal mandate for remote disablement. The window to secure one of these last true tools of freedom is closing fast. If this deep dive into the hidden history of the automotive industry has changed the way you look at the car in your driveway, then you belong with us. We are dedicated to unearthing the history they tried to bury and exposing the traps being set for the future. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and protect your right to the open road, subscribe to our channel and like this video to help spread the word. We are planting the seeds of truth to harvest a freer future. The next chapter of The Vault opens soon. Don't miss it.